In this video, we are going to find out why Germany are widely considered to have some of the best tanks in World of Tanks and how you can dominate opponents with their insane accuracy. So stay tuned as I'm going to show off some amazing games where only a German tank could win, so we can both learn how to get better and of course use these to our advantage as well as take them out. The first game that we do have for you today then is on, of course, Glacier, and we are going to be getting into an early game spot. Now this is a good way of spotting the enemy tanks that are going to be making their way over to, of course, the heavy tank corner in B1 and B2, so you can also get a free couple of shots, as you've been seeing here, on some of the people that cross on this location. Now you should be aware that there are potentially ways in which you can get hit from opponents, and of course sometimes you get an opposite number on the enemy team pushing up into this location, and of course some of them pushing up into the top of the glacier itself. For example, our friend here in the P43 TIII, and so we managed to get three shots in this game, and we're about to get a fourth already within this game to pick up nearly 2,000 damage, and this shows you a really good early game position that you can use on this side of the glacier. Now everyone knows on the enemy side you can see where this T103 is, that is also a decent spot. Now we get lucky hitting the T103 here, but I was happy to poke over the ridge as there's no super high alpha TDs that are going to be sat in the background that could potentially really mess us over, and of course we're helping our team out here by kind of making the T103 think about his actions here. Now then, with the T103 being removed and of course the majority of the tanks in the center being taken out, I decide I'm going to push up into this location where we do find ourselves a little Panzer who we try and get a little free shot into him. We actually angle right so that we can put the rock in between us and the Panzer, avoiding any shells that he can hit into us, and then rather than trying to take our way up to the glacier, I actually try and get another shot on the Panzer as we can essentially come down this hill. He's probably going to be looking over here, but he doesn't actually look, and we managed to finish him off for an extra bit of damage. So when you take the hill up here, you don't always have to go instantly to where the heavy tanks are going to be down by this Leopard and the E75. Now then, with a fantastic start to the game, we are able to push up to this location, which I'm pretty sure basically everybody knows about, where you can essentially farm up some of the opponents that are going to be pushing on the lower side, things like this IS-3 for example, and you can see what we're doing here is just trying to get some free shots into these guys. Now we have to be a little bit careful as they can push down and they can get the elevation dependent on the tank that you're going to be facing, so just avoid, over peaking against some of these guys and make sure that you keep yourself aware, and you can pretty much stay here safely without taking any damage whatsoever. And that's exactly what we do, picking up the damage on the Leopard and then the IS-3A directly after. Now then, one of the big problems is a tank like for example, the E75, who gets into the location that he's in because we can't quite easily get damage on him because he's hidden by this hill or kind of icy rock mound. And essentially what we can do from here is just make sure that we're trying to help out the team as much as possible, and eventually the E75 is going to get surrounded from multiple directions and we're hopefully going to be able to deal damage. Now one thing that you can do, of course, if you are interested in trying to open up angles, if for example a tank is where the T10 is, you can actually slightly maneuver so that you put one side of your tracks on the rail on the side over here. Now if you do this, you can essentially get a better angle to look down on the tanks, and you're going to have a much better game and be able to hit some of the people that you wouldn't have been able to otherwise. We managed to find the E75 from the backside and finish him off to be able to secure this flank, and essentially now it's our game to win. We can go in, we can try and get a bit more damage at the end of the game, having picked up 3,800 damage, secured the middle, then secured the western side of the map, and now it's time to try and secure the rest of the game to our advantage. And when we've done this much damage, it's purely a case of trading the rest of our hit points at the end of the game to get a little bit more damage, and we find ourselves up against the T25 AT, who's out in the open alongside the Black Prince, and we're going to go for the Black Prince since we want the more health and we can easily deal with the T25 at the end of the game if he manages to survive that long, which given the fact the LTG is going in, it doesn't seem like he's going to survive much longer. And with the Black Prince now pushing down, we can get another one into him, nearly getting 5,000 damage so far. With 3 tanks left left alive on the enemy team, we have a light tank, we have a tank destroyer, and we have an artillery piece. But considering that they are all very lightly armoured vehicles, we can load those HE rounds, which the Leopard PTA has an unbelievable kind of round, and that it has 105 pen, and so even some of the mediums in the game you can pen reliably with these HE rounds, and I highly recommend you guys try it out when you do find yourself in these situations in these German tanks, as German HE just seems to be better in almost all regards, and we find ourselves a little M53-55 who we hit for an extra bit of damage and pick up 7 kills within this game with 5,900 damage so far. Now we make an aggressive push to try and hunt down the WZ to try and get that Chadley Walters, but unfortunately aren't able to manage to secure it, as our round doesn't quite reach there fast enough to finish him off, as our teammate in the UDES finishes him off instead. Now then, the next game that we do have is a one on El Haloof, and we're going to see some good action in the E75. Now this is the tier 9 heavy tank from the German line, which leads on to the E100, and of course is one of the key vehicles that I think everyone will actually end up playing at some point in World of Tanks, as it leads from the Tiger 1, and this is one of the most popular tanks in the game right now. And considering that this tank is absolutely superb in the current meta of the game, having both armor and alpha damage, it makes this tank unbelievably good at being able to drive a wedge in between you and the opponents, and be able to just push unbelievably well with both the great accuracy and super high alpha damage, having 530 alpha damage per shell, making it one of the highest alpha damage heavy tanks in the game right now, and is able to just annihilate flanks. And quickly, within the first minute or so of us actually getting into some action, we picked up 1500 damage, and we're able to push now towards the M103, which we can see is of course our counterpart on the enemy team, and of course an American tank, which yeah, let's just say E75 is a little bit good, and we managed to high roll the M103, somehow penning on the move for 649, which is basically the standard rolls of the E75, as for some unbeknownst reason it was just never hitting for 530 and was only able to hit higher than that. Now we rock on forward, we're keeping our momentum, because in this game we're absolutely decimating the opponents in El Haloof, and so this tank is brilliant at being able to be that breakthrough heavy tank, because it has the accuracy, it has the aim time, and when you have as good of stats as this vehicle does have and the armor to back it up with, it makes it really easy to make these pushes here. Now the WZ on the enemy team, of course, trying to go for us, but what we do is we angle slightly just as he's about to fire, and that allows us to bounce around. Now as we move up here, the T-30 gets spotted, we place one into him on the move, acting quite slow because we don't want to go full pelt, because that would bloom out our gun, and so we just move slightly slower and we're able to hit him quite nicely. Now rather than focus anyone else, we want to get the Ho-Ri out of the game, finishing him off for 514, and this is where it feels incredible to play the E75, and it's been a ruffle stomp of a game so far. And rather than going for just the sheer number of kills in this game, we're going for that damaging number, as we were working towards trying to get as many mark percentages as we can from this game, and of course the more damage we're dealing, the better we're going to end up on that regard. So managed to hit the lower plate here. The 122 TM is on the hill sniping at the back of the map, and he is maybe going to give us an extra shell of damage in this game, but there is an artillery piece last left alive as well, who we may be able to get one more into, but the 122 TM over peaks the hill, and we're able to plow another high rolling shot into the 122 to pick up 5.4k damage, and the enemy artillery decides to do what artilleries do best after hitting me once again and deciding that he's going to find himself down in the water. Yeah, unfortunately we didn't manage to pick that one up, but we did pick up 5.4k damage in one of the more accurate and awesome heavy tanks from the German line, one of the reasons why I think it's in this video. This next game features on Malinovka in one of the brand new vehicles that Wargaming have released, and quite possibly one of the worst vehicles that Wargaming have released recently for the German line, the TIII Jager. Now this tank features one of the best accuracy guns, but of course it has some limitations, which is why this tank can be a pain in the backside to actually work, and although you have 420 alpha, same as the Leopard PTA, this tank has way less mobility and is a lot less flexible than you would see with the Leopard PTA. However, the accuracy does make up for it, and if you can play this thing right, using it in the traditional sniper sense like you would typically expect from a German tank, you can have some brilliant games, and we're going to see one of those right here. Now unfortunately for the Type 4 Heavy, crossing up into the hill, it's not going to work out all too well for him, as we're able to target him down using this perfect accuracy, and due to him being so slow, it's easy shots of damage, and we find ourselves another tank, the AE Phase 1. This is a really nice position at the early game to get a few shots of damage potentially as the enemy heavies are going to cross up, and since we aren't the slowest in the game, with about 40 kilometers an hour top speed, but of course using turbo, and of course when we are maxing this tank out as maximum as possible, yeah, I mean, if not probably a lot slower and probably a hell of a lot less usable, as we're able to snap quite a few shots in this game. And much like you can see the snapshots in the German tanks, if you want to do me a massive favour, then of course snapshot that like button, and of course let's see how this thing can play out in the later game and if we can actually carry this to a victory, given how many of the enemy team are on the hill and how our team seem to be in the losing position on the hill at the moment. Now luckily what we can do here is get into a nice spot where it is literally a free farm. This is one of the easiest things that you can do in the game. When you have this accuracy, genuinely feels so nice, and although this tank is of course very expensive if you want to guarantee it out of loot boxes, because we all know what loot boxes are like in World of Tanks, this one is probably not one I would recommend just spending hundreds of pounds to try and get, as it is a little bit lackluster. And although you know you could play a tank like this, you have the PTA, which is available for free in the tech tree and is slightly faster, and you saw just how powerful the PTA could be in the first game that we did have in this video. The one problem that you have when you see the TIII Jager in the game is that it doesn't get a fully traversable turret, which can be a pain in the backside when it comes to trying to snap opponents that are, you know, beyond that your limit. And so you have to turn the entire hull, which can mean that you miss out on a lot of damage. So when you can find opponents, you want to be going for blind fires, and we're doing the traditional spots on Malinovka that you saw just there. Now unfortunately for us, the Progetto 46 is making a move coming from behind, and rather than fire instantly, we wait for him to go behind the bush until we fire, because that allows us to increase our camo. It might not necessarily guarantee that we are going to be able to remain undetected, as you know, for the most part he could potentially have max view range and spot us, but at the same time he is very close to being outside of render range, and in fact he probably moved back out of our render range, or at least our max spotting, to be able to avoid even being detected in the first place. So it's a nice little one there, and we try and get that last shot into him, but unfortunately doesn't manage to hit. But we do manage to spot an SDRV who's in the center of the map, and this is where we can go in, because this tank, although it isn't necessarily the best at being a brawler, when you're in the late game it actually feels really nice to use the accuracy when you can single out opponents, and we'll see that now. So with the enemy team basically being done in at this point, we decide to push in towards the STRV. The one thing I don't want is to be capped out, or at least be put enough pressure on us that we can no longer be able to decap without taking a ton of hits and potentially being taken out before we get there. So with 3 TDs on the enemy team, we managed to actually push in and find ourselves up against the back end of the STRV with a lucky little shot into the back of him there, and we pull behind the ridge, allowing ourselves to essentially be a pain in the ass. Now at this point I can take a few hits, and we're going for the cupola of the STRV, which is an easy pen, and it allows us to actually pull back over the hill quick enough such that he's not going to be able to get any more damage. And then with him still being able to be locked in his siege mode, he's not able to turn quick enough to deal some damage to us, and we get another free shot of damage into him. But the TIII Jager on the enemy team, our counterpart, does get taken out by us, and we manage to get a little bit more damage in this game. But can we get one more into the enemy artillery, who we absolutely hate, and I got penned multiple times by artillery in this game? Just wait and see. Now obviously we saw exactly where the artillery shell came in, so we are just pre-aiming where we're thinking this artillery is going to be, roughly, and you see the round actually comes in directly from over there. We go for a little blind fire, but unfortunately the enemy FV207 manages to directly hit the artillery, so we don't get any more damage on him. But we do pick pick up 4,000 damage showing, and we actually hit 2 blind fires in this game to bring our grand total up to 4,900. Now, alongside the previous TIII Jager, we did find ourselves getting another vehicle in the Jagtiger prototype. It's essentially a Jagtiger but a tier 8, but has a few characteristics that are of course slightly worse than the Jagtiger, being that you are very slow, and of course you do get the same alpha, but you have slightly worse statistics on this thing. But with the German accuracy, we're able to snipe weak points of heavy tanks, and of course, working as intended, managed to snipe the cupola of the AMX M4. But of course, with all of these brand new tanks, there do end up being some flaws, which is essentially the armor model of this tank, although being a Jagtiger, can be a little bit troll, and I've found that this tank is one of those that is very strong in certain positions when you can be aggressive and you can continuously manage to find opponents, but as soon as you're forced into gameplay where you have to try and bait it out with heavy tanks that have the same alpha as you, you are basically just a big farmy just juice box for the enemy team to farm, which is why I found the Jagtiger prototype to be a little bit annoying to play, and in fact one of the more annoying tanks that I played out of all of these German ones that we ended up doing within this video. Now, one of the biggest problems I found with the Jagtiger prototype is that although you do have gun depression, because you're so huge, it makes it very difficult to use that gun depression all of the time, as soon as you get onto a slope, you can end up being raised way higher than you're expecting, and you can end up missing out on damage, where slightly slimmer profile tanks could use that gun depression slightly easier, and you don't have to expose as much as the hull armor, as you're seeing here with trying to find a shot onto the 110 here, which maybe we can get one into, but of course we'll have to get a little bit lucky with the German accuracy. And of course you can see the IS-3 keeps poking in a pretty awful position, and you never really want to be doing that in an IS-3, as this is the ultimate counter to that spot, and maybe we're able to get one into the side of him. Unfortunately only track him, but maybe we'll get one more into him in a sec. So the IS-6 does indeed pull out again using the same strategy. I'm not entirely sure what he was trying to do, but we do pen him there and find ourselves a nice little SU-130 PM who's out on his side, and if we were able to quickly switch between our ammunition types to find ourselves those HE, we could deal a massive amount of damage, and up to, you know, 788 if you high rolled with this gun. But unfortunately we don't manage to do that, and we could have actually finished off the SU, so maybe that was a bit of a misplay here. But there's still plenty of tanks left in this game that could be a real pain in the backside for us, but instead of really thinking about that, we decide to go in, because this tank is not one that you kind of hold back until the end of the game, because if you do that you'll find yourself not opening up enough opportunities to deal damage, and that is exactly what the Jagtiger is all about. It's about being that aggressive style, but it is a difficult tank to play and make work, and so it kind of goes in that mediocre category where, although it is a decent tank in certain situations, 90% of people are going to find it very difficult to make it work in, like, probably 50% of the games. There are just some maps that just do not work with this tank, and you have to expose way too much, and in tier 10 games everyone goes through the front of this thing, as you can probably expect, being that it is a Jagtiger. And you can see us here just trying to get the CC at the end of the game, trying to go for the tracking shot so we can get some assistance as well as deal a bit of damage, and we go in for the ram. We are heavy as hell, and so we can just ram this guy out of the way for a little bit of extra damage and finish him off, receiving no ramming damage in return, and pick up 3,700 damage in a not bad result in this tank, considering this tank isn't really my playstyle. Now, this game on Cliff in the Borsig is one of the most fun games I've had in a long time, and it's an insane one to see how both me and my platoon mate, who is also playing in the Borsig, managed to use HE rounds that we weren't able to use in the Jagtiger prototype effectively in the last game. And we're going to say and completely change that in this one, as we've managed to win this game for our team, securing the middle and dominating the enemy team, and of course the enemy team's tank destroyers as well. So as we go through this game, really pay attention, as this is one of the reasons why you can still use the 15cm on the Borsig and come out with amazing results, even if the 12.8 is probably the more competitive gun. And it wouldn't be because you have 334 heat pen, would it? Yeah, nice little shot on the KV5, who of course when you have 334 heat pen basically has absolutely no armor and is going to really struggle to bounce many rounds in this game, and we deal a 794 damage shot into him. We actually hit the mantle of the KV5 in the next shell, so I guess I can go and screw myself that one, but Either way, a not bad start to the game, picking up 1200 damage and securing almost a fire for effect already, but we're going to see something epic as this game goes on. Now how about this shot for German accuracy? We slowly poke all of the people that have pushed up aggressively and we try and get a free shot into the Caliban, which of course guides itself straight into the top of the 703-2, who I managed to pen and my platoon mate also manages to pen to really give our middle finger straight to the 703-2, finish him off, and of course we can focus down some of the rest of these guys who are also poking on that corner in the form of the KV-5, and we preemptively fire, get penned, but don't worry, as this game goes on, there's some more HE pens to be brought out, even if we didn't pen the Progetto earlier. Now one of the biggest negatives of course the Borsig is that, yeah, when you are firing heat in this thing, you can end up just tracking opponents, and we only managed to track the Progetto here, who gets away with being hit by a HE round that could have potentially penned him for 1000, and of course then managing only to track him, but he doesn't get away with it for too long as he manages to get taken out by one of my teammates here. And now it's time to really dominate the middle. Even though we're down by 1000 hit points, this game is going to go in our favour as we move. Now the biggest threat in this game is this T-32, so we really want to get him out of the game as quickly as possible because he's stopping us from progressing towards the enemy cap circle, and of course the TDs that are going to be sat in the back, and he's going to be proxying us every time we poke this centre ridge. So when we get him out of the game, we can really start using the Borsig as it's intended, remaining as a hidden TD, and rather than being this brawling heavy playstyle where you have to just use the alpha, take a few hits and get tanks out of the game. And the Borsig with the 15 is amazing at being able to do this. Just watch what this T-32 cacks his pants right here and manages to get pumped for 729, finishing him off and really securing this middle position so that me and my platoon mate in the other Borsig can start doing some excellent things against the enemy TDs, who are going to be sat in our favourite position at the back of the map, which is very effective. Yeah, not so much in this game. My platoon mate then finishes off our favourite player in the BZ-166, who manages to fluff a shot against us earlier, which we love, and then he gets taken out. But now my platoon mate tells me that he's going to go and spot the enemy TDs. Now with the Borsig's amazing camo and the fact that it has decent view range, he's able to spot and we're able to pump with a lovely HE round pre-aimed for the Spratuk, who gets taken out by the FV-4202. Not for very much, as we didn't leave him on very much, even though he was on full health. Just 2 shots later, he's back in the garage where he belongs. And with 2 more tanks left alive, the enemy SU gets spotted. We ends up breaking our gun, and before I manage to repair it, we're kind of already going for the shot. But don't worry, because let's just say our platoon mate also has HE, and yeah, bye bye Mr. SU, camping at the back to win the game, but unfortunately not winning this game. And with 3600 damage on my clock and 1260 assistance, with my platoon mate also absolutely clegging, and with a charioteer left alive, what are we going to see that happens to this charioteer, I wonder? Oh, yes. Borsig working as intended, and this is why German tanks are just an amazing amount of fun, and why I think a load of people should really test out the Borsig with their 15, even if it isn't the most competitive. You can see here, it's just a ton of fun when you get it to work. And between both me and my platoon mate, we picked up 7,500 damage between us, and of course got a ton of assisted, which would have been brilliant for getting our marks percentage up. And hopefully this video has been amazing for you guys to see a variety of different German tanks, and if you have liked it, then subscribe and join me in the next one coming soon, where we look at the double pumpers and how they are going to ruin your day.